Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're so excited to have you here and look forward to starting our discussion on the importance of the South Asian American vote. So there are 5 of us here, and I thought before we got started, it would be nice for us to introduce ourselves to talk about why we're passionate about voting and why we wanted to target this program towards a South Asian or Indian American audience. So I can go first. My name is Kanmani Duraikanan. I'm from Delaware. I'm 16, and as someone who can't vote, I think my interest in politics really started when I went to a military school for high school, and it made me realize that issues like sexism, homophobia, and racism were still really big issues in our modern 21st century times. Before I went to a lot of liberal schools in the city, so that was like a big awakening for me, and that's when I started to actually care about the news and things like that. But then this year with the Black Lives Matter movement, and realizing just how deeply rooted systemic racism is in our country, I realized that systemic issues needed to be combated with systemic solutions. So I started working with organizations over the summer, and I realized that one of the easiest ways to guarantee your voice is heard is to vote. So I wanted to bring awareness in my own community because after the Black Lives Matter movement, I noticed that a lot of Indians were staying silent. They would say something on social media, but I didn't see them at protests and stuff. So I just wanted to help bring awareness in my own community about the importance of showing up and speaking out. Soumya, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so that's super awesome. And so I'm Soumya Ramesh from Cupertino, California. I'm 22, so this is my second presidential election that I'll be voting in. And I'm really passionate because I've been brought up to always take an interest in politics, whether I had similar opinions or different opinions from my peers in my community. So I remember thinking after voting the last election that because of how our voting system is, it's based on an electoral college. So each individual vote matters. And so I felt that it was important to bring this awareness and make sure everyone gets out there and gets their vote out. I'll pass it on to Priya.
Thanks, Soumya. Hi, guys. My name is Priya Armavendin, and I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm 19 years old, so I've already voted in 2 elections. I voted in a local election and then the primaries. I'm also a first-year student at the George Washington University studying international affairs and economics. Voting for me became a salient issue after the 2016 election when I was first introduced to the implications that politics had on communities in the country. So I'm a part of the South Asian community, that's why I'm here. And I want to ensure that South Asian Americans like myself have the knowledge and the resources to vote and make their voices heard. The South Asian community has given me a safe haven in an unfamiliar and oftentimes unkind American society. So making sure that fellow South Asian Americans are able to vote and vote effectively is really important to me. And I'm going to pass it off to Agash.
Hello, my name is Agash Armavendin. I am 19 years old, so that means I am also able to vote, and I've already voted as of right now in my first election. I am from Maryland, and I currently study at UMD, studying business management. I had my love for vote. My passion for voting has been started from the 2016 election, just like everybody else, but it really started to ramp up last year at the primaries, where I started to realize that I wanted to fight for rights that people should have, like healthcare and a proper due process and more. But what really set me off the edge was the pandemic response. Not only did that solidify my thoughts that Trump cared about America as much as he cared about a BLT sandwich, but also it exposed the true disparity between rich and poor, private insurance and public insurance, and it shows how the healthcare system is really flawed inside and out. And the Black Lives Matter movement has also really been helpful in me learning more and more about disparities between Caucasians, South Asian Americans, and African Americans and Latino Americans. I feel like in my community, voting and politics has been a hot button topic. And I wanted to come on here because I wanted to make clear that I think that we should be able to talk about this, and we should be able to have a conversation and exchange of ideas. But we also should be having the right mindset when it comes to helping people and helping others, because we have some problematic views on other things, and there are views that I disagree with, but I would respect as its own thing. But I feel like we need to talk more about politics so that we can normalize it and we can get more interest in both the voting system and in our lives. With that, I pass it on to Iniel.
Thank you, Agash. I think I can. My name is Iniel. I'm 16. I'm Sri Lankan, and I can't vote this election. But I think one of the reasons why I've gotten really interested in politics and voting in general is because, like as Agash said, there's always going to be disagreements between things that I respect but disagree with. But I think especially recently, with the things that my peers talked about. It's not just a question about policy or something like that. It's much more serious questions about rights and injustice. And I think it's really upsetting to see somebody come into power and realize that a majority of eligible voters in America don't even register to vote and don't go and cast their ballot. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like Priya said, the very, very serious consequences that come with not casting your vote. And the problems that come for communities that aren't as fortunate as South Asian Americans and other groups of people in America. So with that, today we thought we would sit down and have a conversation about the elections and its role in relations to the South Asian community. We want to provide facts and resources as well as perspective in an effort to encourage members of our own communities to give greater importance to the election and voting. Having immigrated to this country, I know that a lot of members of my own community may not have been provided the crucial information regarding voting. So today we hope for this not to be an intervention or a lesson, but rather a discussion that can allow you to take away something important or just hear different perspectives on some of the things that have been going on in America right now. So to start us off, Kanmini is going to discuss voting and voter registration.
Okay, so voting in America. In the beginning, we as Americans fought the Revolutionary War to separate ourselves from England and have a democracy. But in the first election, only rich white men over the age of 21 were able to vote. Everyone else has had to fight for their right to vote since then. Former slaves, people of color, women, and young people have all fought several battles for their right to vote. There are still groups of people such as felons who are disenfranchised in the United States more than 200 years since the first election in America. In addition, there are indirect forms of voter suppression such as photo ID laws, voter intimidation, poll taxes, and gerrymandering that harm millions of voters of color in states such as Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia. Not everyone has the ability to vote, but voting is the foundation of our democracy, and tonight we'd like to talk about how we as a South Asian American community have an obligation to use our voices to vote and make a change. So what is our community's reputation politically? Our community has a reputation of being politically inactive, and this brings about the question, so what does being a South Asian in America really mean? We subscribe to the model minority myth. The myth states that we as Asian Americans are smart, successful, and obedient compared to other minorities, and we are seen as tolerant of prejudice and discrimination because we never speak up and are always quiet, especially when it comes to civil rights issues. The myth did not just come about out of nowhere. It was propaganda spread by white Americans when they needed us as allies during the Cold War. We used to be seen just as many other minorities. There was a period of time when Chinese immigration was banned and Japanese people were placed in internment camps. When the ban on immigration was finally lifted, it was only for educated and skilled immigrants, and so the stereotype was born and used to put other minorities down. But it also led us to not ever stand up for ourselves or other minorities, as we tricked ourselves into believing we were living the American dream and that we achieved our success just by working hard, and that other minorities just need to try harder, which is not true at all. So I thought we could discuss what are some experiences we've had as South Asian young people with a model minority myth, and how has it played a role in our lives personally. Priya, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So I did subscribe to the model minority myth honestly, up until this past summer when we had this huge reckoning on race and social relations. And I used to be really complacent in those Asian American stereotypes. I always thought that my goals were to get good grades and keep my voice down and assimilate. But that's not the point. The point is we're a minority, so we face discrimination as well. Though not on the same level as other minority groups, it's our duty as another minority to stand up for those people without a voice. With our privilege and with our financial stability, we are able to hold events like this and to raise awareness for issues that are dictating this entire country. And we can use our vote, we can use our voices, and we can use our ability to organize to solve these systemic problems. Aniel, what are your experiences with this?
Yeah, thank you, Priya. So kind of going off of what Priya was talking about, I think another major consequence of the model minority myth, at least in my experience, has been that, like we're also immigrants, we're also a minority, but we're not, causing trouble or whatever. And that I think is a very, very wrong line of thought. And we've clearly seen that in all of the racial problems that that have been brought to light this year. And I also think in terms of my life, the model minority myth has kind of been this thing where, we externalize everything that goes on in our country, both politically and culturally. And so we don't take responsibility for their wrongdoings. It's always like, don't question your teachers, don't question your authority, don't do anything that's going to bring too much attention to you. You just need to get good grades, or you just need to succeed in this situation and leave the system. You don't need to fix the system. And I think that's something that really frustrated me as a kid, and I still get frustrated because being born here, I think I feel more of a responsibility for all things American, and I want to question the systems. And if I see something wrong, I want to do something about it. And I think, and that's where voting ties in. I think a lot of people, especially immigrants and South Asian Americans, they don't feel that their vote matters. They don't feel like they need to do too much in terms of politics because, they're just living in America. They're just living in the Americans' world, whereas we are Americans, and if you're able to vote, you also have a responsibility to cast that ballot. So, anyways, that's kind of my connection with the model minority myth. Agash, did you want to talk?
Thank you, Anil. I've also subscribed to the model minority myth, and I've also been it's been hard for me to question authority. And I think that kind of changed when Trump became president and started just being a douchebag from the very beginning. But it more or less kind of grew as I've learned and I've grown. And the model minority myth, I've learned that it's kind of affected my whole life, and it's kind of affected how we see see ourselves, and as well as how we see other people. The South Asian American group is seen as obedient and intelligent and good at school. And I used to think that that's who I am. I'm good at the math. I'm good at science, and that's just who I'm going to be. And I thought for a while I was going to be a computer scientist, but in the past few years, I've realized I'm not that type of person. Now, I still like math to an extent, but I'm a movie guy. And by the way, I don't really like science that much, but I'm a movie guy, and I like checking up on movie stats. And there are a lot of people like me who like other stuff like sports and art, including you guys. And I feel like that is the way we see ourselves, is that we're the hardworking guys. We're the people who are just going to be hardworking all our lives. And that's very harmful to us, because we need to see ourselves as great, as more than just that. We need to see each other as people who can do anything. And that's the American dream. But unfortunately, how the model minorities affected us is that it's a false sense of American dream, because we're theoretically going at it, but we're really not. And it's even worse for African Americans and Latino Americans. They cannot even get to that level of hardworking, intelligent, because they're seen as less than that. They've been constantly been pushed against for a long time, and their attitude, they're falsely seen as the thugs or the border hoppers. And a lot of people I've met told me, well, they can work hard, just like they can work hard and they can get there. And I think that's just a very ignorant sense of thinking, because African Americans have suffered for a long time, as seen recently with the police brutality and the way that they aren't seen as smart or thoughtful. And I think we need to use our power, and we need to use our elevated stance, and we need to stand with them instead of just cowering to privilege and the Caucasian myth. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Soumya.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone has been saying so far. I think all of us at some point in our lives subscribe to that model minority myth. And definitely for me, I'm from the Bay Area in California. So the majority here is very Asian American. So we're very comfortable in voicing our opinions in our own groups, that are the same ethnicity or the same races. But when it comes to other races or other ethnicities, when we're in those groups, we're not as comfortable voicing our opinions. And in that, we're still subscribing to that model minority myth where we keep quiet and not question anything. But especially in this current election and in the current political climate, we have to be vocal because there's so many important issues that are up for debate. And I definitely do understand, like, for example, my parents who are first generation immigrants, they really couldn't afford to think past survival and how to keep their family together, and they didn't have time or energy to influence their greater community. But however, we're all second or third generation Americans, Asian Americans. So we have to recognize that we can still respect their values and traditions, but we also need to confidently occupy a new role in the American public and increase our civic engagement with everyone and make sure that we all get there and just show up and vote. And I'd like to pass it on to Kanyan.
Okay, so I know a lot of us have similar experiences, and I don't want to sound repetitive, but again, with the Black Lives Matter movement, that was an instance where I externally saw that people were scared to speak up and turn out, but this carries on to many other issues with Indian Americans, with voting, even with issues that affect us because we don't feel truly American or like we belong in politics because of a lack of representation. And we don't think we deserve to complain because we came to this country later. But the reality is this country was built off immigrants, and our voices do deserve to be heard, and they matter, and we have every right to complain. So I think that's something we really need to ingrain in our heads. But on a personal note, I think, as many other people have said, just being very obedient when it comes to authority, and just thinking that learning is all I'm ever going to be good for. And it wasn't like a learning where, oh, I'm going to venture out and learn about politics and think outside the box. It was a learning where whatever the teacher tells me to learn, that's what I'm going to learn and nothing else. And I think I also tend to stereotype others a lot because of the model minority myth even now. And that's something I'm trying to get better at. But it affects us negatively too, because we see each other differently because of it. And one of the biggest things I think I've seen personally was when I started to get into politics, my mom did not want me to voice my opinions at all. She was just like, if I was outside and it was a little bit too loud, shut up. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get hurt. Someone's going to say something and your future is going to be in trouble. And I think we don't find any power in our voices. And that's something we really need to work on, just realizing that our voice has power. So yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to give a little bit of statistical history on the, political status of Indian and South Asian Americans' votes. So of the 2 million Indian American eligible voters, about 500,000 of them are in battleground states. This population is getting bigger, and with every election, Indians and South Asian voters are becoming more and more of a formidable voting bloc. Indian Americans, in comparison to other Asian minorities, have actually a higher voter turnout and are generally more informed about elections and their candidates. Historically, Indians have tended to vote for Democrats. However, there is a small yet growing group of leaning or right-leaning Trump-supporting voters. For example, the Howdy Modi event propagated fear and hate through inflammatory rhetoric on Facebook and WhatsApp. As we all know, there are a lot of parallels to draw between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. They both voice very nationalistic sentiments, and a lot of what they say can be construed as nearing fascism and are very hateful and do harm a lot of minorities and oppressed groups. Indians, as we can see, are not a monolithic captured constituency. That means that they are very varied in their opinions. They don't vote only one way. With this diversity, it shouldn't be used to divide us. It should be used to unite us, because we all can speak from experiences of this model minority myth of shared experiences with discrimination and stereotyping. We need to work together to change the state of the country for the better.
And to go off that, and this is why we need to vote in the upcoming election. So in this upcoming election, there are many key issues that are on the ballot, not only at our national level, but also state and local elections. And voting in these elections will ultimately decide the course of our nation in the years to come. One of the issues that will directly affect what's happening right now is the pandemic. So close to 30 million people have lost their jobs due to the coronavirus, and a new stimulus package won't be approved until our next president is in office. And because of the pandemic, so many other issues have come to light, especially the nation's view on healthcare.
Kunmini, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So as Soumya said, the past year has revealed many problems with our country, such as the pandemic exposing our lack of healthcare access. So as of today, 218,000 people have died in the United States due to COVID, and 8 million people have contracted the virus. And I think we've all become very desensitized to the virus, but it's serious. Like in the beginning, when it wasn't even here, we were all freaking out, and we were like, it's going to kill us all. But now that 218,000 people have actually died, you see anti-maskers, you see people saying the virus isn't real, and that it's, it doesn't have that big of an impact on American life when it's impacted our culture and everything. So we could have gotten rid of COVID in the beginning if we had a proper plan or proper leadership. Even now, things could have been better if healthcare was more affordable. But people are not going to the hospital when they are infected if they cannot afford it. About 44 million people in this country have no health insurance, and another 38 million have inadequate health insurance. That's nearly 1/3 of the country. With these numbers, the pandemic is never going to disappear because people can't afford to get healthy. And that's not a place that anyone should ever be at.
I totally agree, Kunmini. So taking a deeper look at Trump and healthcare, especially in the midst of a pandemic, I think is very important information, and especially with this election coming up. Contrary to what the Trump administration says, Trump's executive orders and numerous legal endeavors regarding healthcare will and already have made healthcare less accessible to the average American. So from allowing employers to provide insurance plans with exponentially less coverage, to being in court right now to reduce coverage for pre-existing conditions, we're definitely going backwards in terms of healthcare, and I think those disparities are more evident now than ever. So the truth is that even though we as South Asian Americans may not be as highly affected by this, we can just see in our African American communities, our Latino communities, how there's such a disparity in the way we've been affected by this pandemic. And we have to look out for our fellow minorities and those highly affected by it as well. So take this pandemic as an example for the immense disregard that the current administration has for healthcare and insurance. So we're not here to encourage you to support Biden or denounce Trump, but you just have to think about making the right decision before you cast that vote, because this election is life or death, and thousands of American families depend on things like the Affordable Care Act, and they need coverage and health care support more than ever. So yeah, with that, I'm going to hand it off to Priya.
Yeah, thank you, Aniel and Kunmini, for talking about the salience of healthcare. I think that's definitely something that affects everybody. And just as important, I think, is the issue of voter suppression. So systemic voter suppression has plagued elections in the US since the inception of the country. While explicit tactics like poll taxes, literacy tests, and amendments prohibiting people of color and women from voting, millions of Americans are still harmed by menacing and clandestine methods of voter suppression. And at the foreground of modern voter suppression is none other than our president, Donald Trump. He's vehemently opposed measures to make it easier for constituents to vote, such as resisting increasing funds for the United States Postal Service to help in mail-in voting. As well, there are a lot of Republican-led states that are using tactics to suppress voters, such as voter ID laws, voter roll purges, shortening of mail-in and absentee ballot voting periods, closing down polls, and gerrymandering. And that's just to name a few. Marginalized groups such as people of color, low-income individuals, and disabled people are having their voting rights stripped away and their voices silenced. So there are swing states that face the highest rates of gerrymandering. In my state of Pennsylvania, we've seen absurdly unfair redistricting that harms primarily Black voters in communities in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh primarily. Nationally, 59 million Americans live in a state where the winners of state elections have won fewer votes than their opponents. So, as you can see, that's just not how democracy should work. If elections are supposed to be fair, then the person with the majority of votes should win, right? 33 million Americans have been purged from voter rolls since 2014 to 2018. And in states like Georgia, polls have shut down, which means that people are not living close to the polls, and it's causing a hindrance to vote in person. So we, the American people, cannot have a say in government unless we fight voter suppression. That's why it's imperative to not only vote for a sensible presidential candidate who will spearhead the fight against voter suppression, but also for sensible state and local election candidates who are committed to ensuring safe and fair elections. And now I want to pass it off back to Aniel, who's going to speak on the issue of police brutality.
Yeah, so I think we're going to try to introduce some of the key topics that are just major things that are kind of weighed on this election. So now more than ever, we see the major problems in policing and racism in America. The fact is, no matter what your political beliefs are, police brutality and systemic racism do exist, and it isn't a question. So, Sami, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking off what Aniel said, I feel that most of us see systemic racism as something in America that's a very Black issue, that it's against Black Americans. However, we are involved, whether we like it or not, as a minority race. And it's not just having those of Asian descent in the police force and not helping those who need it. For example, in the very prevalent George Floyd case, we saw that there was an Asian American police officer that was in that force and wasn't actually helping another person of a minority. And I'll pass it back to Aniel.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good point. And so generally, like, law enforcement should be protecting people. That's their purpose, and they shouldn't be killing people. And those are some of the very founding values of our nation. So we need to elect leaders who are going to work to dissemble the systemically disadvantageous systems in our nation, not only in policing, but in education laws and healthcare laws. No reason validates supporting an administration who downplays and does not work towards solving systemic racism in our nation. Human rights have to come first, and we can't go backwards.
You talk about white supremacy. Yeah, it's a major problem. White supremacy is Kyle Rittenhouse crossing 2 state lines without police following him after he killed 2 protesters, while Jacob Blake, the guy who was shot 8 times in the back by a police officer, handcuffed to his hospital bed. Now, we can argue about whether he deserved to be arrested, but the point is he didn't get his due process and he wasn't treated fairly by the police system. White supremacy is people with guns during the pandemic coming and saying, we want haircuts. And they say, and the police doing nothing. They have guns and they're storming into Governor Whitmer's place. But meanwhile, with Black Lives Matter, the police force not only does nothing when white supremacists try to attack them, they even join in. They've beaten up many different people. And white supremacy is Christian extremists bailing out people, the police officers who killed George Floyd. And Heather Heyer, who was killed in a Charlottesville protest following the nasty riots with white supremacy and neo-Nazis. What do those things have in common? They've rampaged for the past 4 years, and we're not doing, and we need to stand up to it. And that is why this election is hands down the most important election in history. To quote Bernie Sanders, it's to give African Americans, not to mention Latino Americans, and even us, a chance to fight back against the people who are trying to oppress us. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Priya to mention how Donald Trump is trying to fight fair elections.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think those issues of racism, police brutality, and white supremacy are all things that are just being swept under the rug by President Donald Trump. And with that, he is trying to maintain his seat of power. And by doing that, he's just an ardent opponent of fair elections, plain and simple. So like I said, he has fought against increasing budgetary funds for the USPS. He's instigated voter intimidation to his white supremacist supporters. So in the first presidential debate, as we saw 2 weeks ago, he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. And they're notorious for brandishing their guns. Throughout his presidency, Trump has cried voter fraud, claiming that it is a major issue in America and can be overcome by voter ID laws. And as I mentioned, that's just another tactic for targeting and suppressing people of color voters. In addition, he's filed numerous lawsuits against states like Ohio and Pennsylvania to survey polling stations, yet another tactic for voter suppression. Trump has also refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he were to lose. It's clear that our current president will not accept the terms of the election without a fight, so let's give him one. Make sure you go and vote for officials who are not complacent in unfair elections and vote out the ones that are. Make sure you organize people to vote in historically oppressed communities. Make sure you write to your governmental officials about the necessity of fair elections. To get the outcome that the American people want, you must make sure that you are committed to fighting for your vote. Oh, okay, so I want to pass it back to Agash, who's going to talk about how this election is literally based on the outcome of the Supreme Court as well.
Thank you, Priya. Look, we talked about healthcare. We talked about Trump's apparent glee at trying to sabotage elections and purging voter registrations and voter intimidation. We talked about Black Lives Matter. We talked about white supremacy. You know what ties it all together? What could decide the fate of all those? The answer: the Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away last month. May she rest in peace. Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for progressive rights for her entire career: women's rights, race rights, LGBTQ rights, abortion rights, anti-search and seizure laws. And now it could all be undone because the Senate and Trump are ramming their justice weeks before the election. And this is hypocritical. And this is because it's hypocritical because when Obama tried to push a justice on election year, they said no because, it's an election year. We should wait for the next president to do it. But now they're going back on their word and pushing their justice because they have the power. But not only is it hypocritical, it's dangerous. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who is the justice that President Trump has chosen, is highly religious and cannot separate church and state. During the hearings, we should have realized that Barrett has proven that she cannot do this because she has been quiet on climate change, abortion rights. She's been quiet on voter intimidation. She's been quiet on ballots. She's been quiet. And she claims that she's not a pawn, but there is proof that she is otherwise. And honestly, this is mad. It could be madness. And the bad news is Barrett's probably going to get confirmed. But the good news is, if we get out and vote, and we get Biden and numerous senators such as Hickenlooper, Kelly, Warnock, Gideon, and multiple other Democratic senators who have a chance. Heck, even Jamie Harrison is a toss-up. He could actually defeat Lindsey Graham, and that's huge if you ask me. If we do that, we can expand the Supreme Court, and we can get more liberal justices. Heck, if we get to 67, which is not going to be likely now, but in the future, if we get 67, we can impeach Brett Kavanaugh, who sexually assaulted multiple women, and we can get a justice that will actually fight to protect the Constitution, not destroy it.
We hope that all the issues that we've just discussed further explains why your vote really matters and really counts this year. A lot of people seem to think that their vote doesn't matter because they're only one person or they're just one vote. But the truth is, more and more elections are being won by thinner and thinner margins, and your vote can make a world of a difference.
Yeah, and I think one of the clearest examples of these thin margins was in the last presidential election in 2016, where we experienced one of the closest elections in American history to date. So Clinton actually won the popular vote by 2.1%, but Trump ultimately won the presidential seat by leading in the electoral votes by 14.5%. This happened because of swing states. So for example, Trump won Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania's electoral votes. In Pennsylvania, Trump only won by about 70,000 votes. In Wisconsin, he only won about 27,000 votes. And in Michigan, only about 12,000 votes. If those votes had gone the other way, we could very well be under a Clinton presidency today. The fact of the matter is that every vote counts, even if you don't think that your vote won't count because you live in a blue state or a red state. It doesn't matter because these votes ultimately go towards the electoral voters who are going to decide who your president is. And that's why it's important to make sure that you always vote in your elections and that you also help other people to vote in their elections as well.
You mentioned that Trump won by a handful of votes because of voter apathy, but also third part, Jill Stein was in the Green Party in 2016, and she got 500,000 votes, many of them from those states you mentioned, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and a numerous amount of swing states. Vote smart. Please do not vote for third-party candidates because they won't have a chance to win, but they have a chance to screw up the entire process. Don't vote for Joe Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins, or freaking Kanye West. Just vote for someone who you think is going to win.
To add to that, I know it would be nice to vote for whoever we want, but unfortunately, the way our system is built does not allow for any third-party candidates to have a real shot at winning. Like me personally, I don't identify with being a Democrat or a Republican. And yes, like sometimes I read other third-party candidates, and I'm like, I really like resonate with you. And if I could vote, I would want to vote for you, but I can't. And that brings about again the bigger issue of reforming the system. And if you ever want to learn more about that, Hassan Minhaj, I know a lot of Indians love him, you know. If you want to watch Patriot Act, there's an episode on ranked choice voting, and it really goes into depth about that and offers a solution. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Kanmani. It's hard because we're kind of stuck in this bipartisan system, which is kind of the biggest problem with elections in the first place. But ideally you would vote for whoever you want, but especially with today's climate, it's difficult.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I know that many people feel that their vote doesn't directly elect their president, but especially for those swing states that Priya mentioned before, if your vote joins enough of other votes, they can really swing the district or the county that you live in. And it definitely matters when it comes to the electoral results of your state. Now, we've given a lot of importance to presidential elections, but I want to briefly touch on state and local elections as well. We definitely need representation on all levels, and therefore voting in state and local elections are also really important. So, because they usually receive less voter turnout than our national election. So your vote in that rate matters so much more compared to the national election. Even, for example, like in Atlanta in 2017, the mayoral race was won only by 832 votes, which is less than 1% of the 92,000 votes that were cast for the whole race. It's also important for you to vote in local elections because that affects you personally. For example, local elections usually pick like your mayor, your city council, a school board, and your district attorney, and they are responsible for issues such as policing, school quality, affordable housing, public transit, and so much more. So definitely when you're casting your ballot this year, vote nationally, vote state, and vote local.
Right, and going off of what Samia said also, voting is kind of like the oxygen mask on the plane. You want to make sure that you have everything that you need in order to cast your vote and vote in every election that you can, and then help other people get the resources that they want as well. So firstly, we highly encourage you to learn about registering to vote and making sure your vote is casted this fall if you haven't done so already. A simple Google search can yield hundreds of resources that can help you get the information you need. A great resource is www.vote.gov, where you can search for your state or even your county and find the crucial deadlines for requesting and mailing in your ballot. On www.usa.gov/voting, you can make sure you're registered to vote for at least our next election. I'm 16 and even I was able to register to vote when I went to go get my driver's permit. So it's crucial and it's an important part of being an American citizen. So with that, I hand it off to Priya.
So like we've touched on, the average American does have the power to change elections and thus the power to change the state of this country. It's important for all citizens in any state to vote. However, I think it's most imperative for those in swing states such as Arizona, Georgia, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, Minnesota, North Carolina, and Wisconsin to vote. These are the states that are going to determine the outcome of the election. And like we saw in 2016, it only takes a few thousand people to get these states to swing one way or another. So if you're in one of these states, vote. And if you're not in one of these states, organize. Organizing can be as easy as posting a voter registration infographic on Facebook, or volunteering for a phone banking event, or even hosting your own voter registration drive. You can find creative outlets to organize people to vote in these states and also in your state as well. And we want to provide you some resources on how to do so.
Yeah, so piggybacking off of that, I'm from California, so we're a very historically blue state. And we've been out here, and a lot of people in California do go out and vote. And we want to make sure that people in these swing states also are voting. Now, we're not asking them to vote one way or the other, but we just want to go and make sure they are voting. And there's a program called Vote Forward. If you just do a quick Google search, you can find it. And they are an organization that help increase all of our civic participation by sending letters to voters of these states. They have a pre-written letter, and all you do is add one or two sentences for a personal touch to tell them why they should go out today and go to polling stations and vote. Another way, as mentioned before, phone banking is really great. If you're not into writing letters, you can just call up people, make sure they're registered, make sure they're planning to vote in this upcoming election. And I'd like to pass it back to Priya.
Yeah, so Vote Forward sounds like a really incredible organization that's working to fight voter suppression. And there are a lot of other organizations that are doing so. And one example is Reclaim Our Vote. So I've been working with this organization for about a couple months now, and they do very similar work to Vote Forward. They help to fight voter suppression by holding phone banking and letter writing events, and they are incredible. They do phone banking events every Saturday. It's very easy. You just sign up, and you can call how many ever people you'd like to call, and just make sure that they know how to vote and they know how to register to vote, and they also know where their polling stations are. So even if you don't decide to sign up for these two particular organizations, you can also sign up for a myriad of other organizations as well, or you can even hold your own voter registration drive.
So I work with the organization, the Civic Center, actually, and we work on getting young people registered to vote. Because, we're the upcoming generation. We have the power to make change. And that's really important to realize because, again, like right now we see a lot of apathy. And they've helped me realize that. And they hold workshops on how to hold virtual voter registration drives, which I've went to, personally attended, held multiple. It went really awesome. So I would highly recommend that. If you go on the civiccenter.org, you can find resources to do so. And if there's any, younger people out here, even if you can't vote, I just encourage you to talk to your friends about the importance of voting because it's all your lives on the line. And for adults, I'd really tell you to tell your kids about the importance of voting because it's something that's not talked about enough and it should be talked about since our kids. And from here, we'd like to move on to a question and answer section.
Do you want to let Agash do his last?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were doing that after the questions.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah. We can do it before that. Uncle, you're on you're not muted, Uncle.
Should we click on the raise hand thing? Let's raise their hand. I'm not sure how to do it though.
Sorry, what did you say, Samia?
Someone's raised their hand in the attendees.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm so sorry. I don't actually know what to do after they've raised their hand.
I don't think we have the capability. Ruben Uncle can let them in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ruben Uncle, can you do that for us? And let them show their video and audio?
Cool.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this is our uncle. Excellent presentation by all of you. And in fact, I and my wife went and saw India on. So very proud of you all.
Sure, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Uncle.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The point I'm trying to say is, okay. Hi.
Hi.
Chennai uncle.
Hi. Very, very, very.
Yes, uncle. We promoted you to be an panelist so that you can give a good feedback to these youngsters who has taken this mission in doing this ultra-ordinary job for us.
Absolutely. I hope you all can hear me. Really, congratulations to Agash, Soumya, Priya, Kanmani, Iniyal, and also for Rupan to have this. So it's fantastic. I was just telling earlier that I and my wife went to the hospital when Iniyal was born. So I'm very proud to hear all these thoughts. This is really a long time coming. And all of you covered both long-term and short-term issues. Brilliant. There is nothing else I can add here. So just I have a comment and then a question to all of you. The first comment is, of course, the blue states will be voting and we will get Democrats and all, but there are not enough progressive senators or Congress people. We have just very few, like AOC or Sanders, Bernie Sanders, like that. So even if you are in a blue state and a Democrat gets elected, it's not going to be sure that they're going to be for healthcare for all, or to save the Social Security, or addressing the climate crisis. Okay, so these issues are going to continue. I think it's going to be a landslide win for Biden. Even then, so this is going to be, you need to be active continuously, and the parents and the grandparents, everybody will love to hear you and follow you. And there are so many things, so many directions we can go, but please take the lead, and we all be very happy to listen to you. And we, the Tamils especially, are more focused on the Tamil language, culture, which is good, which is important. But now the time to address the issues of this country. So that's a thought. The question is, this is a fantastic start. So what are you thinking of moving beyond the election? Do you have any plans to take this into an organized effort and continue this Zoom talks, as well as like a meeting in which once the COVID situation is over, inviting dads, parents, grandparents to a meeting, and then brainstorm and come up with some clear, concrete ideas to address issues, because we can. And not that Democrats, all of them are great. And so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Thank you, Adesola. I can start. So I think I completely agree with this election. It's not a solution. And I think, we've all heard the phrase "settle for Biden." It's not the ideal solution for all of us, but I think right now, especially with this presentation, our goal is more kind of highlighting how important it is just for a change of authority. And we know that some of the things that are going on in the current administration won't keep happening, which is always a move forward. But I completely agree. Like, after this election, there's still a lot of things that we have to keep working on. Just because we vote blue, or if you support red, just because you vote red, this doesn't mean that it's going to be the right choice, or it's going to continue to align with your thinking. I think it's kind of difficult because sometimes things can be your personal values or your personal beliefs. So it's difficult to kind of impose what you believe in or policy you believe in on other people. But that's a great takeaway, is that even if, something that we said doesn't really align with what you believe, that's the beauty of voting. Is that you have a choice. And there are some things that are just clear-cut right and wrong, but there are the things where that does kind of change. I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
Yeah, I actually, that was a great commentary on that question. And I've had a lot of discussions with my friends who were upset with the fact that they had to vote between Biden and Trump. It's kind of a repeat of the previous election where we're not too thrilled on either candidate. But again, this is just a means to an end. It's not the end goal. It's just we're trying to get to a place that promotes change. And if we go the other way, then we probably won't be able to get that change. But after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gave a really great Instagram Live chat, and she basically told her viewers that once you're done watching this, go and organize and make yourself an action plan. So what I think all of you guys can do today, you can do a couple of things. First, you can tell people in your communities to vote. So you have the ability to reach out to people who would not typically reached. I'm sorry, I think you're off mute.
Uncle, I think you're not muted.
Is it Ruben, Uncle? No. On the ATR webinar thing, it's not muted.
It's not muted. Oh, there we go. They're muted.
So to get back, I think everybody who is attending this Zoom call tonight can make an action plan for themselves. So what I did was I made sure to write down 5 different people that I could reach out to. And because we're all from very different communities, I can say that I'm from the South Asian community. I'm a student, so I'm in the student community, and I'm a female, so I'm in the female community. You can reach out to these people in a way that, a conventional politician can never reach out to because they don't know how to speak to you on that level. And a good example of this is actually, I have a friend who's Chinese, and his family recently got a voter registration guideline that was written in Chinese. So there are really creative ways to reach out to people in our community. And I think that's not something that's just limited to this election, but for future ones, and not even just for elections, but also policy issues and other crises that are going on in this country.
I'd also like to add,
So, guys, there's one more question over there from Gopal Kandasamy. He's asking why you are calling model minority as myth. Is it not true South Asians are model for minority community? Anyone wants to take that?
Can I begin to answer that initially?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the problem is realizing that we were much like other minorities when we came, and that we experienced many of the same problems that other minorities do. But as we said in the presentation after the Cold War, and America wanted more Asian allies. Well, they wanted China as an ally. So they started letting Chinese immigrants in, but they would only let educated and really skilled Chinese immigrants in. So the only immigrants that were coming in were exemplary immigrants, and that's where the model minority started. So yes, we were a model, but that in itself came up out of experiencing hardship, I guess. It wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And also, to kind of touch on where the myth part comes from is that, as Kanmani said, at one point, I guess Asian Americans were the model minority, but the problem comes when you equate your experience as a minority or as an immigrant with the experience of all other minorities or all other immigrants, where the problem is that because we were the model minority and we were, educated and, have XYZ opportunities, you can't equate your experience with another minority's experience because they didn't come here with the same opportunity, the same expectation. Their lives are very, very different from ours. And so we can't say, okay, we work hard and we don't cause trouble and we're not participating in crime. So why are they doing it? It's because we came here on a certain condition, whereas they didn't, and their experience is very different. So I think that's where the myth part comes from.
Can I add an analogy to that? I feel like a really good way to get an understanding of that is comparing it to the caste system. Over here, it's like a racial caste system and it's a racial hierarchy. And this country was literally built off of Black people's backs and their blood and their sweat and their tears. And we don't have that same experience. And in India, you can compare that to the caste system and how, people of the lowest caste are treated, and how they have different experiences. And, you can't discount each other's experiences because of that. They're still valid, but it's just a good thing to remember.
I think that with the model minority as well, I think it's even more important that we are out here voting and getting representation if we are that model minority. If people are looking up to us, that means we need to put our best foot forward and say, hey, we're out here voting. That way everyone else should be voting also. So I think it works in our favor and not in our favor at the same time, in the sense that if people are looking up to us, then we should be out here voting. But at the same time, definitely agree with what everyone said in that our experiences aren't the same as everyone else's. So we have to take that into account when we're giving helpful resources or helpful things to other people and when we're out here voting.
Yeah, and not to talk about this question too much, but I think also as we've been saying, it's hard to think about, but as a model minority and as Asian Americans and South Asian Americans, we have a sense of privilege compared to other minorities. And so that's kind of where that problem roots, is that just like Samia was saying, is that, not all the time. Historically, we haven't faced the same. It's not that we don't face discrimination. It's not that we don't face prejudice. We just haven't faced it to the severity and extremeness that other minority groups have. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, guys. Those were the questions that we had. So anyone else, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us right now. On behalf of ATR, we would like to thank all these youngsters. I mean, it's a terrific effort to put this together. Priya and Kanmani, thank you for leading this. Soumya, Akash, and Iniyal, thank you for joining. Appreciate it within the short notice of time. Thank you so much for joining in. So from ATR perspective, one thing we would like to highlight is this is an independent presentation. ATR does not dictate in terms of personal rights for whom to vote, who you should not vote. We are an independent media station, so we will leave this up to you. We know and you know what you should be doing on November when it comes to the voting part. There is early voting that had started already, so we will leave that up to you. There is 1.2 million South Asians who are eligible to vote in this country, and your vote does count. Which way you go, it's up to you. ATR will not dictate in terms of who should vote for, but think through it. Think about our future. Think about our kids' future. Think in terms of what are the situations that we are facing, and mindful of your decision making. That's all I just wanted to share on behalf of ATR. But kids, thank you so much. It means a lot for making time, joining this in, and having this presentation and being part of ATR. So thank you.
Just a quick comment. Can I make it?
Absolutely, Uncle. Go ahead.
Okay. Sure. Please, the education is key. As you know, associations are professionals, both of mom and dad working. And so no time to even analyze besides just saying, hey, Democrat or Republican. And these issues that you have been discussing, I don't think it's any polarizing issue. They're all bipartisan for all. So that's one point. And education is key. And I congratulate ATR. And you can just even take a healthcare or some specific topic and involve lots of youngsters. A climate crisis is for everybody. Healthcare is for these are all not bipartisan issues. And one major flaw in the system, at least as I say, last 30, 40 years, things are more towards like the rich gets richer, the middle class is shrinking. These things are because of lobbying and all. And so one way out of it is all of you to get active and inspire other youngsters as well, so that you can be role models as well as you get into electoral politics, and which we avoided, as you very well articulated. The parents, we just busy, study hard, work hard, get a good job, marry, kids. So this is a routine, and we have to think about this country as well. So one point, we are all citizens. One point I just thought when you've been discussing is the term reparation. When I heard that, what is this? And then when I dig a little deeper, I realized even though the slavery has been abolished, emancipation and all those things, the blacks were not allowed to buy lands or anything like that. Just only they have not been chained, they're not owned. Whereas whites were given lands, and so it's a really big head start. And that still stays right there. And so any help to African Americans is basically trying to do something about it, which I'm not sure they can or cannot. So these are all serious issues. If you just say to an adult, hey, reparation, say, why should you help? Unless if you educate on that topic, we can do better. So also climate crisis, there are lots of job opportunities rather than saying, hey, you're going to be taxed and there'll be lots of taxes, you'll be taxed. So just focus on as ATR Rupan said. So just we don't even talk about this party or that party. Everybody knows that. So just highlight the issues, educate, and keep going. Continue this. I'm glad I joined this. Fantastic, all of you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think to piggyback off what Rupan said, we have like a quick closing statement we wanted to say, and Akash, take it away.
Thank you, Soumya. I just want to say this: don't just vote for yourself. Vote for the people who are less or less than you, or less lucky than you. Sorry, that was worded wrong. Vote for African Americans and Latino Americans. I'm a guy. I'm going to vote for women, and I'm going to vote for non-binaries, and I'm going to vote for my fellow panelists. Vote for people who are financially struggling. Vote for LGBTQ rights. Vote for someone who will fight for those people as well as you. And we will become higher up than ever before. That's all I have to say.
Guys, I wish I could give you guys a hug. Let me give you a remote hug for you guys. You don't know what you have done within the last 60 minutes. ATR, American Tamil Radio, American Tamil Vanoli. Language is not a barrier here. We all are. I came here as an immigrant, and you guys are born here and brought up here. And language was not an issue when you wanted to pass this message. So on behalf of ATR, sincere thank you for all your efforts, and to your parents as well. It means a lot. So keep going. Arasanto, you don't know what you just stepped into. You just gave these guys a bundle of topics, and these guys could handle it. I can speak for they can go and dictate terms in the near future. We all brand ourselves as engineers, doctors, or computer professionals. There's other duty that comes along with us, which is public service. So when as you step into your reality and real life, think through it, make a difference in this community. Being who I am and who am I, where I am from. We come from different backgrounds. We come from various cultural environments, but humanity is one. So just think through that and work towards it. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so proud that we got to do this. And I can assure one thing, with Aruanna and with our management team, we will promote you guys to do this on an ongoing basis, so that this does not stop here. Change does not happen right now. Change is something it happens on a continuous basis, and you guys, as the next generation crop, you will be the next leaders who are going to carry the Tamilians flag, our culture, and towards the next generation. So on behalf of ATR, humble salutations for all your efforts, and to your parents as well for giving you that space, putting that seed on you to plant yourself as who you are and standing up for the right thing. So Kanmani, Iniya, Soumya, Priya, and Akash, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Uncle, for giving us the opportunity to speak here. I know a lot of people aren't willing to do it. So again, thank you.
Yeah. We really appreciate it.
Much. Happy guys. And I'm so glad I got to meet all of you guys through this also.
Agreed.
Hey guys, can I talk for a second? This is KL.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm here in my shop, and I was so happy to hear all of you guys. It's so fluent. You guys were like not even stopping. What it says is your heart is fully having all this thought. It's the pouring of heart. That's what I felt. So this much information cannot come fluently like that unless you feel it. So I felt amazing listening to you guys. And as Ruben Uncle said, please come forward. You guys can lead the whole community with the positive and right attitude. So we really want you guys back and serve the community. This is amazing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Comments.
Rupert Uncle, you're muted. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think, thank you, Samya. I don't think we have any other questions, but, given the time frame, if you would like to take a quick 30 seconds and give your final thoughts and wrap it up, It's totally up to you guys. If you think, I'm done with my piece, I totally get it, and we can wrap it from here.
Can I just say something real quick? Sorry, this is like repetitive, but just use empathy. I feel like people forget about that a lot, and that's what it all comes down to. You, the people around you, you know what we say, it's just empathy. Imagine how much better the world would be if empathy was used when making laws, when making decisions, and things like that. So just practice empathy. That's it. I'm done.
I think my closing words will be definitely vote state, local. That's something I've learned a lot about in the recent times. I don't think I was very involved in my community or honestly even in my state. But like now that I'm learning that how many things go through our local election boards and how much go through our state government, like learning that was so important. And when you vote here, you also vote for your state senators. You're voting for people to represent you. So I think just make sure you get your representation, and that's very, very important.
Yeah, I just want to thank ATR for holding this event. I was so happy to be invited to speak to you and give the very little insight that I do have and share that with you all. I think one thing that you should all take away is, like Kanmani said, is to be empathetic and make sure that you're considering not just yourself, but also the individuals in your community and other communities. And make sure that you have a plan to vote. Make sure you know whether you're going to vote early or you're going to vote in person. I'm voting next week, so make sure you have a date. Make sure you know where to vote. Yeah, please vote.
I also want to thank all of you guys, especially for with your college day, work day, and school day. You guys spend all this time, especially Kanni leading this effort. I really want to thank you guys. It's amazing. Thank you again. I'm sorry I interrupted because I was so excited to hear you guys, so I cannot stop saying it.
Thank you, Auntie.